Hello, beautiful beings. I hope this video finds you all happy and well. I had not been posting for a while because I wasn't feeling particularly called to use the tarot and oracle decks. I instead have been very deeply plundering the depths of my being and my stories. And what I have found is so often that my story mirrors or matches the collective. Now, I'm very mindful, or try to be, of my energy, and I don't often share, unless I'm in a container for it, a story that I have not yet processed to a level where I'm energetically not just dumping. And that's important for all of us to kind of be mindful of, because I think we do heal from our stories and we do heal from the processing of the different events in our life. I know for myself there's been some big lessons around trusting my own tuition, if it's coming up or if I'm just subconsciously saying something that might feel like a fear. It actually might be grounded in some level of truth. And so often we have those little impulses, and it can be as something as simple as you think of someone who you love and care about, and then they message you later that day, or you message them and they say, oh my gosh, I was just thinking of you. There's all these ways that our human consciousness is connected to each other and to the greater story of what's actually unfolding right now. So I know I've been thinking a lot about the collective and how there are some pieces of how information is processed and shared, and how so much of the information that is being processed and shared is, I've read a book and now I'm going to share it so that I can get more likes and that sort of thing. And I remember in the earlier days of YouTube and social media, there were a lot of clear channels. There were people who just sat on a hillside and talked about what was coming up for them energetically and how they felt that that was tied to the collective, or if they were masking themselves, just, sharing it with how the collective was experiencing things. So for myself, themes that have been showing up still are some clearing of old karmic structures, boundaries still being pushed, even if they've been asserted and communicated. And the changes that I'm noticing inside of me aren't just these old stories playing out, but they're coming to a close. So whereas the story typically would have ended and I would have been crushed and devastated, within a day or two, I feel in a completely different heart space, a different mental space, energy, and there's still waves of grief that come up within the journey. I think a breakup is a great example, where you grieve the person, you grieve the loss of the relationship, you grieve the reality you thought was going on, you process the betrayal and feel the hurt of it, all the different layers that unfold within these different circumstances. However, I'm not lingering there. I'm not staying in the pain body. I'm then taking the alchemical message and moving it forth. And I did hear recently that true alchemy is being in true presence with what is showing up. And I don't remember where I heard that exactly. I think it was just a random video I happened to watch. But what I sensed from it was that that's the real truth of matters. You create a cup of tea and you have the cup and you have the tea bag and you have the water. And the cup is what holds the alchemy of the tea and the water the tea ingredients coming together with the water to make the tea. Now, when you sit and enjoy a cup of tea, you sit and enjoy a cup of tea. You don't think about the alchemical process that happened to make the tea most of the time. You're just like, wow, this is delicious. Maybe you're like, oh, this is what it's made of, or I got this tea from this place. Maybe that's a part of the conversation. But ultimately, you're enjoying the sensory experience of what's unfolding through your taste buds, what's unfolding through your feelings as you drink the tea, how it's relaxing your body. You're having a somatic experience. You're having a full body experience as it relates to the alchemy that you created. Now, that happens within the context of our relationships too. And while the containers aren't as often as clear, and there's a lot of confusing things. When you leave the container of a relationship, you can look back and say, wow, that was a nice cup of tea, or that was the worst cup of tea I've ever had. And as you move forward and advance, you don't need to keep thinking about the taste of that particular tea. You think about how it is that you want to create a new cup of tea, and in a better container with better ingredients. You use that, but you don't keep dwelling on how awful that last cup of tea was or how great it was. You work on the co-creative process of establishing something else new. And I would hope that that is freeing. Earlier today, I'm taking a program right now, so I'm learning more about astrology, evolutionary astrology, through Rising Vibrations. I highly recommend Simon and Jennifer, as if you're interested in exploring that for yourself. But what came up was we were talking a lot about the structure and Virgo archetype is about having a lot of structure. Now, I get lost in astrology language. I don't understand that. But where I thrive is story and metaphor. So what was shared was this really beautiful thing that I was able to relate to in the context of my own journey. And when I was a kid, I did theater. Just that is my full-time profession, when I'm not making these videos of philosophical ponderings. But what I noticed as a kid doing theater is I felt really like I had to get it right. I had to get every word right, or I was going to get in trouble. I wasn't going to be communicating. I have to walk across the stage. Like, everything was so structured and confined. This is how this has to happen so chaos doesn't occur. However, the memories of theater, or when we're watching theater, what is most alive for us is when things go wrong or don't go as planned. So on the opposite side of the spectrum, you can have something that has no container. I didn't have a plan when I hopped on here to share today. I just knew that I wanted to try sharing in this way. And that's scary. However, I'm leaning on all the old containers of the structure that was built. Similar to, we learn the alphabet so that we can make words. But we get to a point, just like Shakespeare, where we're making up our own words. I do it in my poems all the time, and I'm like, I don't know that that's a word, but it feels right to me. Why can't it be? The context of it's clear, and we're not always even tuning in with words themselves anyway. They are the container that help infiltrate our consciousness. But really what we're doing is we're sensing the vibration of what it is that's going on, and what it is that we're being shown at that time. We're sensing frequency. We're sensing vibration. What we tune in with isn't ever really what we think that we're tuning in with. We watch the movie, but it's not really the movie that is impacting us. It's the vibration of all that is. I know for myself, being a sensitive person, sometimes if an actor has had a big transition in their life in the midst of a series, I can see that in the actor's field. And because they haven't alchemized their new state of being as a human, it affects who their character was previously and who they are now that maybe wasn't worked into the story arc. So it's very interesting because you can see these different forms of vibrational changing. Now, where was I? I'm not going to lose this stream of thought. I promise you that. Anyway, so we're working on all of these very powerful things within us. And on the other side of the spectrum, to get back to that, is, the no format zone. Now, when I work with kids, or even often in my company when I'm working on, I'm leading an ensemble as we co-create a show together, there still has to be a level of structure to be given. So it's in the middle of these two extremes. No structure at all, complete improv chaos, which can be fun in its own realm, no plan, but that's not usually what we've shown up to do. Everything in life has structure. We're born with almost like our astrological layout. You could even see our energy blueprint, or whatever methodology it is that you want to use to help define your life's path. We are given that imprint early on. Our soul decides it plans it orchestrates before we come in. And so that we work with those patterns, where we work with those templates, so that we can alchemize stuff for our soul's journey. Now, so everything has a template, even if it seems like it doesn't. So it just is important to lean into where that level is for you of your comfort, and where the threshold is of challenging your comfort. Now, you don't have to jump from, having a strict script to standing in front of an audience and improvising for an hour, especially if you have no improv training, right? Or if you do card readings, you don't have to go from going to reading the card to reading the book to not having any cards or any books and then just bringing through messages. It's a process. We develop different muscles throughout time so that we can stand forth in different ways and connect to these different channels. So I bring that forward too, because I think that we are in a time where we're really wanting to explore more freedom. We are wanting to explore what it is to feel free within the context of our relationships, within our work, our paths of service, within our home lives, with how we navigate moving about in this world. So for some people, freedom is not having a cup of coffee every morning and instead switching to tea or orange juice or that sort of thing. That is enough freedom, but then they do the 9-to-5 job thing. For me, I could never do a 9-to-5. Even this is my busy season, and I have to lock in a schedule 2 months before this season. And it's a pretty consistent schedule, but every time it gives me panic. What if something happens? What if I need to change it? Because I don't like feeling confined by time. Now, I am somebody who honors my agreements as well. And I don't want to have to go back on my word and say, actually, I can't show up for that time that I said I was going to be there. Now, of course, everything is fluid and moving, but our world hasn't quite gone from the rigid container of this is when da-da-da-da to be able to be in this flow and respectfully in this flow. Because some people go to the other side and they're just flowing all the time, but they're not respectfully communicating, or they're doing just whatever they want whenever they want without taking account that there is a larger world at hand. So in all of this, I guess the principle I'm bringing forward, and is the very lesson of this video for me, is how can you bring less structure to your life? How can you flow more? How can you align more with yourself and spirit? And how can you do that in a way that doesn't throw your nervous system into complete chaos? The containers are there for safety, and that's okay. You can use a container. You just can't get too comfortable in it, because even containers themselves are shifting. So think about that within the context of your own union. Think about that in the context of your own life, your relationships, your job, your home, everything. Think about what is your safety container and how is that ready to evolve and shift. So I put that out there for you all. If you are interested in doing a one-on-one personal session with me, let me know. Of course, I do readings, which are clearings and readings simultaneously. And part of why I do that is because I don't want to be locked into the structure of we're only going to do a tarot reading if that's not what spirit guides me to do. We might have a session and I might be like, you know what? I need to sing you a song for 3 minutes and it's in light language. I don't know what's going to come through, but I just know that spirit wants me to Ayamaya Samare Tomaya. Whatever it is that comes through. A little bit of light language at the end of this call. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're navigating the energies of the times. I personally am undergoing such a deep transformation of just like an old life and what it is that I am not willing to participate in anymore at all. And that goes back to our messaging of come whole or come not at all. And that even comes back into the self of part of my wholeness is not interacting with dynamics that don't serve me, that don't honor my boundaries, and that aren't connected to the we-based consciousness, the solution-based consciousness, the I am, that aren't connected to source and a heart-centered way of being. So that's how I'm moving forward, and that's how I'd like to show up for you all. Please send me an email at prismhealers@gmail.com if you're interested in connecting for a session. I will send you prices then, and nothing is outrageous. So, anyway, many blessings. Aho.